How y'all doing? We just got back from central office. It is currently almost 2 o'clock. I plan on making this a 3-part video series. I'm trying to get this out today. Just go ahead and get something out. Expect videos part 2 and 3 to Colonial America. Hopefully some point tomorrow, at least part 2. But today is part 1. I figured might as well go ahead and get into it. Go ahead and get some instruction out there. So let's dive right into it. So, last year in 7th grade, should have left off with the age of exploration. What do I mean by the age of exploration? Well, right around the 1400s, countries in Europe, I know my map's kind of hard to see right now, the countries in Europe, their technology is getting better, they're ready to explore the world. The boats are capable to sail across the oceans now, and everybody's wanting to make money. And one way all these European countries would make money would be setting up colonies. This will be a process known as Mercantilism, but basically these European countries, they would set up colonies all through here. The goal of these colonies is to send raw goods back home, like cotton, various crops, lumber, and Europe would turn them into goods such as furniture or teas or things of that sort. Originally, though, Europe was looking for an all-water route to Asia. Because back in the day, they had no idea all this existed. Then the Portuguese, while they was trying to find a way to India, they stumbled across South America. They started exploring it little by little, discovered, oh, there's a big landmass here. Now I'm sure you guys have heard of Christopher Columbus in 1492. Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He would land here in Central America. He thought he landed in India because everybody was trying to get to India because India was making money hand over fist in the spice trade. So he landed in Central America. Thought he landed in India. Rumor has it, since he landed there, he started calling them Indians, and Indians have stuck ever since. That's just one of them tall tales you hear in the history community. Anyways, back to the original point. You have a lot of European countries all of a sudden discovering there's a big landmass here. With that, they have their eyes set on wealth. There's so many resources that haven't been discovered yet, like lumber, all sorts of different kind of mines. Not to mention food products, because remember, this is the 1500s. They're not used to the farm animals we are used to today. Some of them still have yet to be discovered in America. Talk about that more later. One negative of Europeans coming over to the Americas was the immune system situation. Now, where Europeans, they're used to the farm animals and stuff, so their immunities have had centuries to build up over time. Native Americans didn't have so many, so they didn't live in close proximity to animals as much as European farmer would. So over centuries, Europeans' immunities would end up developing or getting stronger, while Native Americans, this is fine where they lived, but when they came in contact with Europeans, they were not used to those pathogens that the Europeans carried. But vice versa, since the Europeans are so used to being around farm animals, the pathogens that the Native Americans carried did not affect them as bad. The biggest killer of the Native Americans wouldn't be guns or knives, it would be disease. Smallpox is a classic example, but we'll get into that at a later date. But the things we want to focus on is who came to this area first. Who came to North America first? There's going to be 3 countries I'd like to talk about, and a couple other groups. Let me change my map here. A couple other groups. First, you have Spain. Spain would end up conquering pretty much all of South America. I know my map don't have it right here right now, but pretty much all of South America and a little bit part of Florida and pretty much the west coast of the United States. Spain will be one of the first European countries out of the gate to successfully establish colonies in the Americas, so they kind of had a head start on everybody else. The two other countries I want to mention is England. England would end up setting up colonies on the East Coast. You guys are probably more familiar with this, known as the 13 colonies. When people say 13 colonies, they refer to the colonies the English set up along the eastern seaboard. And the last country I want to mention is France. Now, France, they would end up coming up through Canada when they came in. Remember, this is all like 14, 15, 1600 while this is all being done. They would come up through Canada and they would go to the Great Lakes area and they would follow the Mississippi River down to New Orleans. So France would pretty much end up taking over the Great Lakes area and the Mississippi River area. Now keep in mind, these countries all have the same goal in common. They're trying to make money. So they're setting up colonies. Spain, you won't hear so much. The big thing we want to focus on here is England and France. What I told my students last year, especially around this time frame, is when you always think of England and France, just automatically think they hate each other. When they're bored, they like to go to war, so on and so forth. Just keep that in mind. England and France do not like each other. That'll play an important role, especially during the American Revolution. But what would be a hotbed contention would be this area right here. This area was highly sought after between England and France. This will be known as the Ohio River Valley. Now, the reason why the Ohio River Valley was highly sought after by England and France was because it was rich in furs, particularly beaver. A lot of folks back in the day would make their money trapping beavers, selling the furs. It's a luxury item. They would send those furs back to Europe. Europe would turn those into coats, hats, and all the fancy stuff rich folk like to wear. I reckon. But that's why this area would be highly contested. Now, there's two other groups we need to mention. Native Americans. So you have all sorts of Native Americans living on this continent already. I want to say, don't hold me, I want to say estimated 4 million before the Europeans arrived. But all sorts of various Indians living throughout here. You usually got the Iroquois and Cherokee down here south, Chickasaw. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Iroquois Confederacy. You also got the Wampanoag tribes up in, around this area. Lakotas, Native Americans all over the place. Keep in mind, there's many tribes, and all these tribes have their own goals and ambitions. A lot of people like to paint them with a broad stroke. That's not the case. Each tribe almost separated independently from each other, governed themselves the way they saw fit. Different from Europeans. Europeans just saw this different, and since it was different, they was kind of not scared or timid, but it was strange to them, so they labeled them as inferior. But yes, you have many tribes through here. Some would side with the English, some would side with France, some would side with both, just to make out good for themselves. Some would just always fight both. Keep in mind the Indians. Also, another group to keep in mind is the Africans. We'll be talking about slavery. The first slaves would arrive here in Virginia and Jamestown. We'll say 1608. But you'll have a lot of Africans coming from, especially from Central and West Africa. A lot of them come over as slaves. We'll talk about that more at a later date. But what you have essentially is you got English, you got the French, you got the Spanish, and you got Native Americans and African Americans. Already, we can see the roots of the United States beginning to form, and that foundation is already a melting pot. I'm sure you've all heard that term before. Melting pot. That's just a blend of everybody. That's how we started. We got all these cultures put together, so keep that in mind for a later date. But with these groups, with the Spanish, they'll be mostly in Central and South America. Keep in mind, they'll also be along here in Florida and a little bit of the west coast of the United States. France, they will be mostly the Great Lakes area and the Mississippi River. And England, they'll be pretty much on the east coast of the United States. And keep in mind, all these folks are here to try to make money. That is their goal, is to make money. Native Americans, this is their home. This is what they're used to. They're seeing these fair-skinned folks probably for the first time. They don't know what to think. Remember, they have no idea how diseases and bacteria work. They didn't have microscopes or anything like that. All I know is these people died, and all of a sudden, their own are dying. Yes, keep that in mind. So there's going to be hostilities just because of that. But we'll talk about the treatment of Europeans to Native Americans and Native Americans to Europeans at a later date. And also, keep in mind, Africans, many of them are going to be slaves brought to the Americas. Many are just wanting to get home. The global politics don't matter to them. They don't care what Spain or France or England has to say. They just want to get back home. Imagine being waking up one day and having to wake up in a new strange place. Nobody speaks your language, and you're forced to work, and you don't understand why. That's the reality for millions, eventually millions. We'll talk about that. But just to recap this first lesson, I love my maps. Sorry, I'm a history guy. I love my maps. Hopefully you can see this map a lot better, a little bit more detail. But what you'll have is Spain. They'll be pretty much colonizing all South America up to Central America. Like I said, parts of Florida, and all the way up here to the west coast. England, which you see here in pink, it's pink to me. I don't know how the camera's displaying it. But they'll pretty much be here on the eastern seaboard, the east coast. This orange, it's orange to me. This will be France. This is where they came in through the Hudson Bay, down here to the Great Lakes. They set up shop quite a bit around the Great Lakes, and they'd also follow the Mississippi River down and set up a bunch of forts this way. This green zone is what I was talking about earlier. This was the Ohio River Valley. They want this because of the fur trade that's happening here. Keep in mind, you have Africans coming in from the slave trade, and also the Native Americans are here. You have all these cultures, not to mention the minor European countries that we didn't get to mention, like Ireland, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands. Netherlands will be the one who set up New York. But there's plenty of influences coming here in between 14 and 1600. That's all I can think of. But just to recap one more time, the three main European countries to colonize the North Americas in between 14 and 1600 would be England on the east coast, France along the around the Great Lakes area and Mississippi River. Then you have Spain with South and Central America, with pretty much Florida and the West Coast. Now, this white that you see, right now they have no idea it exists. People have to go discover it. We'll be talking about that during Manifest Destiny and during Thomas Jefferson's presidency, but we got a while before we get to that. So hopefully that's your first lesson. Hopefully this works. I plan on uploading 2 more to Colonial America. Colonial America will be a 3-part. You just watch the first part. The next video, we're going to talk about the 13 colonies. I'm sure you've heard about 13 colonies. But the 13 colonies, pretty much you see this pink area, this is what we're going to be focused on. They like to break the 13 colonies up into the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies. We'll talk about the distinctions between them. And then for the last video, we're going to talk about the American identity, where the foundations and thoughts about government comes from, what style of government should run a nation, how should the leaders be elected or picked or chosen, various things. Yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Bear with me, quality will get better, this will get better, but I just want to get something out there for y'all today. If you have any questions, I guess right now the best way to reach me is through Remind. You can email me. That's it. I look forward to part 2 coming tomorrow. All right, part 2 about the 13 colonies. And till then, everybody be safe. Peace.